From a professional soccer career to becoming a driving force in the mortgage industry, Brian Covey has shown what it takes to find your competitive edge. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. Find your competitive edge with Brian Covey.
What's up, guys, and welcome back to another edition of Finding Your Competitive Edge. So I am super excited because living in Nashville, we're able to pull in some pretty cool people as they come in and speak. And our guest today was actually here speaking in Nashville at a conference and event that had a couple hundred people, he was saying there. But I'm excited today, guys. You're going to want to tune into this episode because not only is Tony Whatley built and sold a business, he's been in corporate America. We have some kind of parallel lives there, but he's got his own community, the 365 Driven podcast, the community. He's a speaker, executive coach, and he works with people all across the country and even multiple countries. He's got an event coming up in Costa Rica this summer, and he is one of the people that I go to, not only to get a good laugh, because he makes some fun at entrepreneurship, coaches that aren't really real, and we're going to talk about some of that today. But what I want you guys to listen into today that I think you're going to benefit from is this entrepreneurial journey. A lot of times it feels lonely. You're not sure where to go. You're getting mixed advice. You're seeing all this stuff on social. And one of the things I love about Tony is he shoots it straight about, guys, that's not how they got to success. This is the true path to get you there. And so we're going to cut through the noise, the BS, and all of that fun today. We're going to have some fun with it. So get ready to laugh, get ready to learn, but also get ready to listen in so that you can find out what are the next steps in your journey that you need to take to win today, the week, and the month. Let's rock and roll. Tony, welcome to the show, my friend.
Man, first of all, Brian, I have to say that was a very professional introduction, and you didn't even mispronounce a word, so good job. Good job, brother.
A lot of practice. You know, what's funny about that, and I want to talk about this with you because you have your own podcast, is I'm scared to listen to my first few episodes. The stumbling and the things that are there, and I still stumble on my words and all that. But I will say, just like anything, the practice has come from it. So I'm curious your perspective. You have your own podcast, right? How many episodes now?
350 something.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, so I would put you in that top 1% category. Yep. It's one of the ones I would say that I tell people that I actually listen to. There's a few of my friends that I go, okay, 10 or so, that I'm like, I'm going to listen to that outside of the Ed Milet's and all the bigger ones there. But we first connected up through Arte Syndicate, some different groups there, and we were running in some circles and all that. But for people that don't know, you sold your first business at 34?
34.
Okay. So let's go back a little bit before that, though, because I want people to kind of get a little background into how you got to that point. And we had some corporate conversations about living corporate life and all that. But where that started and for you, how you even got into this entrepreneurial journey.
You know, I think that most of us didn't think that the word entrepreneur was a cool word when we were young. You know, for context of listeners, I'm 51. And so back when I was a kid, we would just call them business owners.
Yeah.
And in fact, we kind of felt sorry for most business owners because they were just unhirable people, so they had to go figure something out. And you always had this different thought about business in small town America, like I was raised, that if you didn't have a brick and mortar on Main Street with your last name on some kind of a sign or the window and the hours posted, that was what we thought as a business owner. And when things started to work on the internet and I got online in 1996-ish, I started thinking about, you know, why do we limit our business just to our zip code or our city when there's potential customers everywhere around this world? So why aren't we using this internet for more of a business sense? And that's when digital marketing and business building and online websites and stuff like that started to take off in the late 90s. And so initially I just taught myself how to build web pages because I realized that there was a lot of companies that didn't have websites yet. They didn't even know what the internet was. And I bought books and taught myself how to code HTML and do graphic design and Photoshop and things like that. And I was making these rudimentary websites, 1 to 3 pages, not much things that were selling. We didn't have cart systems at the time. It was really more like a virtual billboard, you know, for people to have online presence. I learned how to buy domains and link those up and create accounts and do all these things. And that was my first side hustle. I was a young engineer at the time and working at very little experience. And I was making maybe $2,000 a website. And here's the thing about, you know, I'm a car guy.
Oh, yeah.
And so I'm very resourceful. I wasn't an entrepreneur in my mind. I was not an entrepreneur. I was just being resourceful. Initially, I would go through the car magazines and I would look for manufacturers that sold parts that I needed for my Trans Am at the time. And I would just call them because they didn't have a website listed on their ad. And I was like, hey, do you have a website? And they're like, no, we're thinking about that. We don't have that yet. And I was like, well, I see you sell full suspension for a Trans Am and it's worth $2,000 or $3,000. Like, how about I build you a website and just trade parts? And that's what I did. I built several websites just to trade
Wow.
for car parts. So I had like all these nice parts and fast car. And eventually I ran out of parts needed for that car. So I went and bought a GMC truck, and I needed lift kits, and I needed wheels, and I needed headers and an intake. And so I just kept building cars with all these website parts. And then finally I didn't need any more parts. And that's when I started charging more money to build the websites.
Dude, that's such a cool story. And I love the cars and things. We're going to talk about that today, because I think for people that don't follow you, they're going to learn very quickly that you are a car guy, but you also have some cool kind of SUVs and some trucks and some things that I watch. I'm always like, what's Tony doing? What's he buying there? Talk to me about that journey and looking back on it. So you're selling websites, basically trading out for parts. Then you're starting to sell it and scale it and actually collect money. Yeah. I'm thinking about that young kind of hustler today, that entrepreneur is like, hey, yeah, I've got this skill. I'm building websites, or I'm helping people with a service, and I'm not really sure how to market that today. Take us through what you would do differently maybe today, knowing what you know now, if you were to start on something like that you're selling a service and something you're going to market out.
You know, things haven't really changed too much. Back then, forums were the thing, right? So we were on automotive forums. And being on a forum gives you an opportunity to be an authority in your niche, where just by answering people's questions. I think a lot of times people want to build, we hear personal brand and things like that. You and I have done that.
Yeah.
But back then it was just a screen name that nobody knew your name. There wasn't real identities behind those things, but they recognized your screen name as somebody that would answer questions and give advice, or at least refer to people that had the answers. And so you can start to position yourself as an expert just by helping people and spending the time to do that. You do that exceptionally well. You respond, you engaged your post today. People today now use Facebook groups and things like that, or social media, to do the same thing. And I really think it's a missed opportunity even now. A lot of people are not really helping other people. They're pounding their chest. They're trying to make themselves look bigger than they are. They're doing all these different things, but they're not really serving people by answering questions. And you mentioned Arete Syndicate. I got awarded a leadership award in that group not because I'm in there self-promoting myself and saying, oh, I have this podcast, you should listen to it, and I wrote this book and you should buy it, and hey, I have these events and you should come to my... I don't do any of that. I don't promote it all in that thing. The only 4 episodes out of 350 episodes I've shared in there were Ed Milet, Andy Frizella, Vaughn Kohler, and Emily Frizella, the 4 leaders of that group. I shared those episodes because they are the leaders, and I respect that. And I just answered questions, thousands and thousands of questions. When somebody had a question about a business or something in marketing or branding, and I knew the answer, or at least I knew the lead that I can send them to, I responded. And by doing that, people start to recognize, hey, this guy actually has some answers, or knows the sources. And that's how I became recognized as a leader of a group.
And that was cool. And by the way, shout out and congrats, because that is a very elite group. Out of the group, and to see you get awarded, it wasn't a surprise to me. When I saw that, I was like, and the other people that got awarded, I'm like, okay, I can see that, because they do answer. I'd love for you to expand on that too, because I think this is a missing opportunity. Everybody's so focused on like, how do I get more like followers or friends or whatever, like connections.
Attention. They want attention.
Attention.
Yeah.
And you made an interesting post yesterday, and you were talking about that very much along this line of like, are you answering questions and providing value to people, or are you just telling people how great you are and look at me?
Yeah.
And talk to me about, if somebody's listening to that, they're like, I mean, that sounds great, but I've been doing the attention thing, and now like I would love to provide value, but how do I do that? I've got some thoughts on it, but I'd love your thoughts on if somebody is looking at that today and they're like, okay, I want to be more like what Tony's doing, because I see that works and actually attracts people in. How do they start to answer questions, start to engage properly?
That's a tough one, Brian. I think that not everybody is wired to be that person. I think that not everybody wants to be a teacher. Not everybody wants to be a coach or a mentor. I think a lot of people, especially younger audience nowadays in the space, they want the attention, they want the fame, they want all these things before they have the result. And so what we have is a bunch of people on the internet nowadays saying the right things without being the right person, because they can learn from people like you, and they can learn from people like me and all the names that we've mentioned in this episode so far, and they're saying the right things. They're just regurgitating what they're saying. They're putting their suit on, they're building their own website, they're positioning themselves as a thought leader without really any thoughts, or really a thought repeater. And so we have too many people out there, right message, wrong person. If more people would spend the time on becoming the right person and doing the work and answering the questions for the people that have questions related to their previous experience, think about this. This is so silly, right? If we look at the distribution of population, think of it like a pyramid. The base of the pyramid is very large and the top's very high. And as we ascend and we get more experience and more results, we're climbing that pyramid, hopefully. So that means everybody at your level or below is someone that you can serve.
Mm-hmm.
And too many people are wanting to skip to the top or pretend that they're at the top by buying the fake followers and the fake engagement and all these things. And they're trying to serve people at levels that they haven't achieved for themselves, when they're really missing a huge opportunity because there's a lot more people to serve at the places that they used to be.
Hey guys, it's Brian here. I hope you are enjoying the show. By the way, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur looking to grow your personal brand, make a bigger impact, maybe increase your leads and grow your revenue, let's help you get started today by connecting up with my friends over at the Brand Builders Group. You've heard me talk about them, but if you're new here, this is definitely the first step to get you started in turning your reputation into revenue. Head over to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey. Again, to set up your free brand call, go to freebrandcall.com/Brian Covey to set up a free strategy call with one of the team at Brand Builders, and they will dive into your specific goals for how you want to grow your personal brand. I can't wait to hear how it goes. And this quote, I know Ed shared it, but Roy Vaden, good friend of ours here in Brand Builders,
I love this quote.
You're most powerfully and equipped to serve who you once were.
Yep.
You know, and I always think that one has resonated and stuck with me, and I've heard it said different ways and all that, but you think about exactly what you just said. And if we'd all take that step back, and a few years ago, that was a very enlightening moment for me to go, okay, who was I 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? And you're right, those people start to appear, and you're like, I see me in those people. Mm-hmm. Let's connect the dots for people that are listening. You mentioned personal brand. I think there's a direct correlation to this, right? Like your brand is built on who you can serve. It's not, as we would say, it's not about you.
No.
Your brand is not about you. No. It's actually showing up, as you said, to become that person. And then people are like, oh, I can ask Tony about this. He has expertise here. Mm-hmm. He's been down that road. He could help me. How do you connect your personal brand then as you start to share things, and even in your posting and maybe some of your strategies? Let's unpack some of that.
Yeah. You know, what you touched on was community leadership versus followership. Even on the days when we're talking on social media, even back in the days when Clubhouse, remember that was a thing in 2020. There was people in these groups that were titled leadership, but they weren't talking about leaders. They were talking about how many followers they had. And having a bunch of followers does not make you a leader. You know this. You're an expert in leadership. You study this just like I have. You interact with people who are truly leaders with real results. It's not about them. It's always about the community. And so I like the triangle thing. I'll use the same example. The follower business model, which most people think is leadership, especially the younger crew who grew up with social media, it's all about standing at the top of the pyramid with both arms stretched open and saying, I'm here and I'm the top of the pyramid and it's all about me. It's egocentric and it's a one-way conversation because it's you at the top being the influencer, being the creator, the content person, and you're just cascading your message down the pyramid. That's all you're doing. It's a one-way conversation. It's not a community. Your followers are not in a community because they're not communicating with each other. They're just there because maybe you're entertaining. And if you are, you get a bigger following. That's awesome. Be entertaining. I want you to be entertaining. But where a leadership of a community is different is it's a pyramid, but it's upside down. The leader is standing on the ground. Both arms are still stretched up, but he's holding this upside down pyramid above his head. And it's a leader of a community's job to facilitate the bonds and the network of the people within the community. So even in my automotive communities, over 500,000 registered members, it wasn't about me. It was about making a cool place for them to hang out and come back and talk about cars and trucks and racing and making their cars faster and building lifelong connections between them. I was not a part of that all the time. Right? I was very selective about my circle, just like we all are. Yeah. But I wanted all of them to become best friends and all of them to remember where they came from, where they met each other, where they could come hang out. So it's like the virtual bar, so to speak. So community builders, like building the bonds inside the community, not worrying about the followers. You know, when I sold that company for millions, it wasn't about me. Like it was the logo that I built. And a lot of that had to do with insecurities and not coming out from behind the logos. But it shows that you can be very successful and make really large impacts without having to build that personal brand that we're about to talk about.
Yeah, dude, I love that you said that. And that inverted pyramid is something like, you know, because you mentioned studying, and I'd love to hear who you've studied and like the impacts there, because I think it'll help people. like I'm still a huge John Maxwell fan, yes. Right? And I go back and I was sharing some of that even with my kids now as they're getting older of like, hey, let's read this book and Think and Grow Rich. And some of these books you just go, this is like, you've got to read this to advance in life and to learn it. Who's been some of the biggest impacts in that leadership topic that you've studied or that have helped fuel your learning and growth?
Really, my dad. I don't know that's a cliche to answer, but he was a sergeant in the Marines and a Vietnam vet. And when he got out of the Marines, he worked in the construction industry, and he was always the center of his friend circle. You know, even we see that. I know that you were like that. I know I was like that. We can just tell that personality. And when I was 18, I started working in chemical plants as a pipe fitter helper, ditch digger, laborer. And some of the places he was known as the leader in that organization, Brown and Root, big company. And for a summer, I got to work at a job where he was like the general, project guy for the whole Brown and Root segment. So I got to see him do his morning talks at an early age and realize like the guys that worked with him loved him. They loved working with him. And it wasn't because he was rich or he was the boss or any of these egocentric type things. He communicated, he actually cared about the people. And when there was things that were going on in their lives outside of work, he cared about them. And he showed them like, hey, you can do better. Like, I believe in you. And so I got to see all these men that would tell me, I'm out there like grinding pipe, and they're like, man, your dad's a good man, Mm-hmm. And so I was like, that's when I started to realize like it's not about yelling and my way or the highway and all these things that most men unfortunately think are leadership. And it's he led without the fear. I got the fear at home, because of the disciplinarian, but I saw a different side of him at that. And so early on, I started to pay attention to leadership, and I was always fascinated with how do you become a better leader? And one of the things I learned from corporate and being in management and hiring hundreds and hundreds of employees is that people want the leadership titles, they want the leadership paychecks, they want the leadership status, but they don't want to actually invest in becoming a leader. And the qualifying question I would have for anybody watching this that's hiring leadership type people or have employees that ask like, hey, can I be a manager? You should ask them one question. What was the last book you read on leadership? And the ones who are interested in becoming a leader will be investing that time in understanding how to become a leader long before they'll ever become a leader. And so that's me. I was studying to become a leader, and I would read books and I would find things online and I would observe people and I would look for good examples and bad examples of leaders. And so you learn what not to do. But I was always preparing myself for higher roles, and I think that that's a missed opportunity for most. And real leaders will let you know that they're ready for more responsibility, more authority, and they want to move ahead. Everyone else just wants the paycheck and the title and the status.
Man, you nailed something for me. Like I saw that coming up corporate America, 20 plus years. And it's funny you mentioned your dad because, very similar paths there. My dad's a psychologist, and he worked in like prisons for a while and was like, basically a social worker, and then worked his way up to then open his own practice and worked in the hospitals. And I was go, that's the guy I learned leadership from, is to leave the safety net and all that and say, I'm going to go pursue this higher education to serve people. Because with that, now he's able to help pastors and people that normally couldn't be helped. And I say, but that turned me on to psychology, which I think in leadership is forgotten about. And so you prompted that for me. You're going, this is what I studied, this is what I did. I go, people often ask like, hey, what's that biggest influence? What's there? How's that played a role for you? Because when you're talking about your dad, what else have you learned from him is what I'm thinking. Because I know I'm thinking about my dad going, man, I learned stuff that's never taught in a book. Yeah. So what else did you learn from your dad? Maybe that people go, Tony, I would love, give me those lessons.
Well, let's touch on psychology too, because you mentioned that. When I was in school, I was in engineering school. So when I was little, hey, even today, unfortunately, people think like if you make six figures, that's the American dream. And unfortunately, that same rule has been around since the 1960s, when six figures was actually a lot of money. Nowadays, you probably have to say, hey, I need to make $400,000 to kind of be the equivalent of inflation. And they tell you, hey, go be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, right?
Yeah.
And I like cars, and I figured out there's probably something to do with engineering, and that's what I did, is mechanical engineering. And when I was working in restaurants, initially as a waiter, worked my way up to management, I was hiring a bunch of students to be waiters. And you'd be astounded how many of them had psychology degrees, sometimes even master's degrees, and they couldn't find a job. And because you got to go the full PhD to get a good job.
That's right.
Unless you just want to be a school counselor, and that's it, right? And so ego and naivety and a little bit ignorance at that age, I was thinking, man, that degree must be worthless. Like psychology, like you got a master's degree, you've been in school that long, and you had to wait tables. Like, and here I am, like, I'm about to graduate as an engineer, and I'm going to get a pretty good paying job in 5 years, and so I really devalued psychology because of that. And I think a lot of people in society do, because they go, oh, no, they don't pay very well. Like, it's a waste of money. You hear this.
Yeah.
But then when you get out and you start to get into marketing or business or leadership, you start to realize the importance of emotional intelligence. Then you start to do the research and realize, like, marketing is basically psychology applied in a visual way. And you start to realize that communication is all psychology. And then you start to realize that the top 80% of CEOs of Fortune 500 companies are not there because of their IQ, their intelligence quotient. They're there because of their EQ. Now, they are intelligent, but they're far more understanding of human behaviors and psychology, emotionally intelligent, than they are just intelligence.
Yeah. Dude, I remember the first time that I was introduced to EQ, and I was at Wells Fargo. So the big corporate world, right? There's a lot of training, which you experienced. And some of it, I look back, I'm like, man, I'm so thankful. Like, crucial conversations, we would go through like all the Myers-Briggs stuff, and you do the DISC profiles and the 360 feedback and all this stuff. And for the leaders that have not been through it, that are listening to this, what would you advise them if they're out there today to start on their journey of that personal growth and development? Because there's a lot of people out there pushing, hey, buy my course, buy this, buy that. I'm like, man, there's so much today that I always say there's so much free stuff that if you start with that and you commit and you're disciplined and learn it, then I always find, then you can work up to, now I'm going to pay to get the next level of stuff. But I'd love to hear your insights on that.
Yeah. I'm going to answer my question about my dad. You asked me about one more thing that he taught me.
I would love to hear that. Yeah.
So the other thing that I taught was from my dad was just the integrity part. Always do the right thing. If you can look at your life, I mean, we all have core values. I've got core values written on my website. I know you do as well. Yeah. But if you distill them down into as few as possible, because there's a lot of overlap with these things. The word that comes to mind on mine is the word integrity. Mm-hmm. And without that, none of the other core values matter. And so that's integrity with your discipline, your consistency, treating people with respect. All these things are based on integrity. And if you don't have that, it all unravels. And I saw my dad make a lot of hard decisions because it was doing the right thing, and a lot of sacrifices because it was doing the right thing. And I've never seen him cave on his principles or his integrity in my entire life. And that's the way I was raised. And that's why you see I'm so hard on people that are doing fake things and fraud things. And because you can question me about that, and I'm glad to answer those things because I have integrity.
Yeah. And
I realize that reputation is something that you get to carry with you your entire life. And if you burn it one time, it all comes downhill, right? And so that was the question for my dad. The question you asked next was,
what lessons did you learn from him about, I love the integrity piece, but is there a story that goes along where you're like, you said you made some hard decisions, but I want to give some people like some insight, because I think this is where we learn the most. Was there anything that you saw or witnessed that you're like, man, that's when he demonstrated integrity, or that's how I learned it as the observer?
You know, a lot of times a relatable story would be maybe the occupation that you have or the current job that you have. When you look at your leadership or the company that you're representing and you see a lot of unethical behaviors or things that are shady or actually illegal, and you choose to keep your mouth shut and you just keep staying there because they're paying your paycheck, and you just kind of go, well, it's just the way it is, that's a lack of integrity. Mm-hmm. And I've seen my dad resign from very toxic supervisors that he's had and the people that would mistreat their employees. And he's like, I don't like the way they lead their people. I don't want to be a part of this organization. And in fact, I've had to do that twice in my own career. And mine were pretty big careers, just like yours. I was making over $200,000 base salary, and I resigned 2 of those companies because I saw things within the organization or the leadership that was against integrity, and there were flat out lies or even some kind of manipulation. Mm-hmm. And when you get to those levels, it becomes your signature on the bottom line to approve these things. And I said, you know what? I'm getting too close to this fire that I do not enjoy, and I don't want to get sucked down with the ship. And then I would resign. So I would come home. Like, it happened twice. And my wife's like, why are you home early? I was like, I quit. And she was like, whoa. And she knows it's for a good reason. She trusts my judgment. But most people will be like, oh man, I can't believe you quit that job. Like, it's such a high paying job. They see the money. They don't really see the integrity part.
Yeah. I love that you share that. Let's talk about that in coaching today. Mm-hmm. Because I know you've taken some funny jabs, I'll just call them, at some things that are going on. And we both see this. I think we're definitely aligned where there's coaches coming out of the woodwork on things. And I feel bad because you watch, you're like, people don't even know what they're signing up for. And then you hear the horror stories later. If there's somebody that's listening out there, they're like, man, Tony, Brian, I would love to find a coach, or I'd love to be part of one of these communities you're talking about. Mm-hmm. Is there a vetting process that you use, or something that if someone's listening, they go, okay, this is the formula I follow to actually vet people out?
Yeah. Well, I think some of this comes with just age and wisdom. I mean, a younger audience probably doesn't want to hear that, but it's the truth, because when I was younger, I thought I knew more, but as I get older, I realize I don't know a lot. And I kind of get excited by the things I don't know. I look forward to the things I get to learn. And so you start to push ego aside and gain some humility and realize, like, I can't wait to learn more things. So one of the things I think about is our BS detector gets more fine-tuned as we get older, because we've seen more examples of these shenanigans. And specifically in the coaching and the personal development space, it really blew up in 2020 when everybody was home from COVID and lockdown, and they're like, you know what? I kind of like being at home. And yeah, who doesn't, right? Like, I like being at home too.
Yeah.
And working from home. And they started trying to get clever to try to figure out how they can make a living. And there's nothing wrong with it. Those are good things, right? But it's when they cross the line and start doing things that are just fraudulent or just misrepresentative of who they are, and they're trying to sell courses on things they've never done. And, so for me, a vetting process would be, the Google, like we just talked about the internet. Yeah. Most people have been online that have been online since the late 90s. And so if someone is telling you that they're successful, if somebody's telling you that they're making 7 figures, 8 figures, whatever, like first of all, if they're using money as their marketing message, you should be red flagging them right away, because they're appealing to people who are struggling with money, and they'll be happy to take your very last dollar for you to sign up for their course. Maybe even try to get you to finance their course. That's how much they don't care about you, right? And so I don't like when people talk about 7-figure, 8-figure this, and we're going to help you make $10,000 a month. If they're using money as their marketing, they're not the right person, because if they're advertising with money, that's all they're thinking about. It's transactional relationships. And so you should be able to go on Google and find out what they achieved, because anything that's public record, like me selling a company, or the company still exists and it's owned by a private equity company now, you can go find the messages. In fact, one other podcaster, I was on a show a couple months ago, she actually went down that rabbit hole and was looking for evidence of me. And I don't know all that stuff, right? But she pulled up the actual announcement that I made in 2007 when I sold the company to my community. And she's like, I found the announcement in the private equity company. I could tell it was kind of like crafted with some legalese. And she goes, can I read some? I was like, yeah, read it. And she read it. And I was like, yeah, we posted that in 2007 when we sold the company. And, wow. So there's evidence out there, and if they don't have any evidence, you should also have a cautionary flag, because maybe some businesses were online. I don't believe that nowadays. Yeah. But the other thing is when people tell you, I did all these things in companies, and they never mention the name of the companies. It's like, I don't know about you, but every business owner I know is happy to mention the names of their companies, because that's like their child. They built that company. And if they can't tell you the names of the companies, then is it real? Because anybody can say anything now. I haven't said my company's on this website. ls1tech.com, performancetrucks.net. There's Deviate Motoring. I've built a lot of companies. Go look those up. They still exist. And so when they don't tell me the companies, I'm kind of skeptic again, because why would they not have that in their bio or mention it? It's just kind of weird. So the other thing is, like, you can go back on their social media. This is a great way to look at these things. Just scroll back a couple years. A lot of people are not willing to put in the work to go delete their old content, because they're not thinking about that. But you can scroll back on Instagram for a few years, and if you see there's a point where their just lifestyle all of a sudden changes, it's like, what are they just trying to reinvent themselves here? And like just start, standing in front of the Lamborghini that they rented and doing the Airbnb flex and all that kind of stuff. Because you see these, like, people are really bad. People that are liars are really bad at hiding lies. And so fake followers, fake Amazon reviews, fake Google reviews, fake responses to your posts. All these things can be bought nowadays. Even podcasters. People want to appear that they've got a more established show. They will go buy fake downloads from these bot farms overseas to show that they get X amount of downloads so that they can hopefully get a little bit ranked a little higher, even though no one real is listening to their show. Like, but why would that matter? You know? So there's endless amounts of these things.
I love that you bring that stuff up because, I think about those things. Like, you think about the people you're going to attract and you're going to try to impress.
Yeah.
It's probably not the people you want anyway. And I thought when you shared that is, a lot of our stuff is recruiting and attracting the right people to our team. And like, you go on LinkedIn, you can see all my job history. So I was like, if you go there and you can't find out things, like that is a platform for you to vet and know, like, who are the people? Yeah. What are they doing? And you mentioned something, I was talking about reinventing yourself. And you made a post yesterday, a comment, I think it was, and a post. You said, it's harder for people to go reinvent themselves over there. Like that's very different than the personal growth and development side. And I'd love for you to articulate kind of the difference between the two. Because a lot of people are, man, I want to reinvent myself and I want to do this and, or I want to make these changes. And, we're into March right now and we're recording this and a lot of people have fallen off. I mean, truthfully, they had these big goals and by this point in the year, very few have stuck with what they intended.
I agree. So reinvention is likely going to be the title of my next book.
Very cool.
That's something I've been called to talk about. A lot of people come to me. A lot of my clients hire me to help them reinvent themselves. And you start to see these similarities and go, that's what we're talking about. Because the keynote speech I gave over the weekend, the title was Reinvention. And when you think about this, I really thought about it. I was in Costa Rica a week ago and I was writing out this speech. I wanted to come up with something new. And I was like, what's on my heart? And this book that I kept thinking about for the last 6 months, like this is going to be it. I'm going to write a speech on this. And so the best way I can articulate that is that we are all the main character of our own stories. Would you agree? Yeah, everybody's the main character of their stories. But few people are the hero. And that stumps the audience when you hear that. Few people are like, what's the difference between main character and the hero? Well, some people will think that just because you've overcome adversity or struggle or some kind of traumatic event that you're a hero. I disagree. That you might be a hero, but you're really just a survivor at that point, right? And a lot of people get stuck in that survivor mode, and they're speaking from the stage from survivor mode. A hero is somebody that will take on bigger challenges, usually reluctantly. Think about all the movies that are after hero. They're not the guys that are pounding their chest like, I'm going to go be the hero. They're forced into a situation. They become the hero. They evolve. But the difference is the hero, after going through that tragedy or that trauma or that challenge, goes on to become something bigger, to take on bigger challenges at their full potential to greatly impact this world. And so if you know that you're holding back and you're doing things on a much smaller scale than you really could do, you're not really a hero because you're just limiting yourself. And so that's the difference between main character to hero. So reinventing yourself is tough because we have all these sunk cost fallacies where people have invested money and time in their degrees, 20 plus years in a career. Oil and gas, like I did that 20 plus years. Spent a lot of time. I paid for my own mechanical engineering degree. 7 years. I was waiting tables. I was working construction. So I had a lot of time and a lot of investment. And in 2015, when I had the car accident, and I realized that I'm not serving an industry that's really beneficial to people, and it's not something I feel compelled to do anymore. I'm not chasing this executive path. I want to go make a real impact with people. I had to leave that industry behind. And there's nobody in the oil and gas industry coming to come watch you become a business coach or see you as a speaker or cares about your podcast and things like that. And even a lot of the racing community that I was a part of from those businesses, they're not interested. Maybe 10% of them are interested in what I do now. I'm thankful for those that have come over. But I had to reinvent myself because, one, I didn't like being on microphones. I didn't like being on stage. I didn't want to be in the spotlight. And I had to get over those kind of things because I realized that, I've been very successful hiding behind my logos of my companies, but that's not my full potential. My full potential is to be able to display my messages by teaching people courage, confidence, and business principles. But I had to be able to do that at a larger scale and be comfortable doing that and be confident doing that. So I had to invest in the coaches and the mentors and do all those ugly reps and do all the ugly content that you had to do. And I have no regrets, but I had to reinvent myself. And I think that's also what fascinated a lot of people in the journey that knew me before and after, because I'm really good at showing you, I'm going to go try this new thing. I'm going to suck at it, but I'm going to stay with it, and you're going to see results. And so they get to see the transformation in real time, which, yes, that benefits me, but it also lets them believe what's possible for themselves. And that's what I want to do, is encourage people. Like, you can do this. If I can do this, you can do this. And that's a true statement.
Mm-hmm. I think too, what you took on last year with skateboarding.
Yes.
I'm watching this. I'm like, what are you doing, Tony? You're going to get injured. I'm thinking all these things. And you took that on. Was that similar to like just a challenge? You're going to take it on and show people, hey, you can do whatever is possible. And I know it was kind of a passion, but you kept going. Like, I remember the first videos. I'm like, dude, don't hurt yourself.
Yeah, I had a health scare about just over a year ago. Actually, in March of last year is when I actually started skateboarding, age 50, right, when I started. And I had to go to the hospital, and I had these just pains in my lower abdomen, and doctors couldn't find it. I was running all these tests, and I was laying in bed for like 3 days. And when you're in your 50s and you're feeling these pains that you've never experienced before in your life, and the doctors can't tell you what it is, you don't know in those moments, like, am I going to get out of this bed, or is this it? Am I stuck with this pain for the rest of my life? And most people would think of that negatively, but I kind of go into this deeper soul thought. I go, God, if I can get out of this bed and be able to experience something that brought me a lot of joy that I wouldn't be able to do in this current state, what are the things that I would enjoy trying or at least doing again? And there's two things that popped up in my mind in that conversation with myself. Martial arts, I used to do judo when I was a kid, and skateboarding, which I did in junior high, and I was really good at. I was sponsored as a skater in junior high. I broke my arm in 8th grade, and my dad threw my skateboard away, and he's like, that's too expensive. We can't go to the emergency room, and he made me quit skating. And so I was like, okay, I'll go play football and chase girls.
Yeah.
And so I had all these distractions in life, and I always thought, that'd be cool to like try that sometime. And I said that maybe in my 30s. I said that in my 40s, and then I hear I was at 50, and I was like, you know what? I'm physically fit. I go to the gym every day. I can go try this. I'll just pad up. And I told my wife, Lisa, it's like, if I go do this, I'll wear the helmet and the elbow pads and the wrist guard. I'll gear up completely. I don't want to get hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that the safety equipment exists. I don't have ego. I'm not trying to look cool. I want to go enjoy the experience of skateboarding. And that's what I did. I got on the driveway, and I actually called my son over, and he came over, and I was like, you film this. I'm going to try this. And I ate shit many times. I fell so hard. There's videos of me falling down. It hurt. Like, when you're a 200-pound man and you fly on the concrete, it hurts.
Yeah. You
feel it even with pads. It reminded me of football days, like hitting with people with pads, right? And so I remember my earliest videos were like skateboarding day 1, skateboarding day 2. I was documenting this whole thing.
I remember.
And I started improving. And now I'm skating these big bowls and doing backsides and carves and fakies, and I'm doing all kinds of stuff now. And I don't fall down hardly ever anymore. Like, really, the last 3 months, I might fall down once out of every 5 visits to the skate park. And it's a great cardio. I found a great outdoor workout. I'll burn 1,500 calories in 2 hours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I love it. Okay. I got to pull this up because you brought something up that I was thinking. You talked about this with your community, talking about wanting more. And you said you used to believe that someone had to already be rich in order to start a successful company, and it takes money to actually make money. Yeah. What a lie. And I'd love for you to expand on that, because we are told that a lot. It's like, hey, you just need money to do this next thing you're going to do. Mm-hmm. And I love that you put that out there, because it caught my attention of, man, how many times I've been told that. And then once I've gotten into it, I've realized, like, you starting your websites, you starting your company, doing those things, like, you didn't really have any money to start it. If somebody's out there listening and they're like, okay, you changed your belief on that. I don't need money to start something, but I've got an idea and I want to start this kind of side hustle. And I know your book is all around that, like how do you become a millionaire and like actually build the habits and things there. Where should somebody really invest and start within that process?
The thing is that people aren't realistic with their entrepreneurial journey. So if you were to ask me, hey, Tony, what's your dream business? Maybe 5 years ago, it's changed, right? I would probably said, I would like to own a Ferrari dealership on a lakeside with mountains and a full race course around this thing, and like just go all out, have a private jet track there for my jet. Like, you start to think of these big things, and there's nothing wrong with dreaming big, but the problem is that you're not being realistic with your current resources, money, skill level, knowledge. Like, all these things are missing. So what happens is people go, yeah, I don't have those things, so I guess I'm just not cut out to be an entrepreneur, because they're focused too much on their dream business. Mm-hmm. And so in my book, I talk about building staircase businesses. You have to be willing to do what it takes in order to earn the privilege to do what you want. And that takes time. So let's say you want to start a $1 million company, revenue-wise. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's not the first step. Maybe you got to go build something and learn some skills like building web pages or some kind of trading services, right? There's a lot of different services that people will hire. Podcast editing, video editing. Like there's so many different services that you can monetize right now to learn about business, learn about cash flow management, learn about marketing, and you're still cash flowing, you're making profit, you're having fun doing something that you enjoy. And then maybe you grow it big enough to where you can sell it, and then you can parlay that money into the next business, and therefore you're building these staircases business. They get a little bigger and bigger as you go. And most people skip that kind of thought. They just go, hey, I want all or nothing. I want the dream business or nothing. Or they invest way too much money or their lifetime savings into something that's like mid-size without having all these skills. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest mistakes people will make, especially coming from the automotive section, anything that's skill-based or even knowledge-based, people assume that their skills or their knowledge is going to deliver their success in business. And I would look at numbers, like I like data because I'm a logical thinker. So when people are listening, I would say that the skills or knowledge that you're currently being compensated for, you're probably very good at those things, especially if you're working for a company that's paying you a six-figure salary in that skill set or that knowledge base. But don't make the mistake of thinking that's going to make you successful in business, because my estimations, those skills or that knowledge is only worth about 40% of your success, because you have to go invest the time and the money to understand business. Mm-hmm. If you're being a solopreneur and you don't understand marketing or sales, positioning, branding, all these things matter. You should be doing those researches or hiring the coaches or joining the groups to be able to understand these gaps in your knowledge base. Because until you invest the same level of money and time in business expertise, all that skill set stuff's never going to matter. And I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of speed shops out there have come and gone in 20 years of me owning these things because it was the best mechanic in town. And everybody's like, hey, he's the best mechanic in town. And they kind of follow this guy around. Whatever shop he's working at, they want him to work on their car, right? There's a lot of these. Every city has one.
Yeah.
And so eventually the mechanic gets a big enough ego. He's like, well, I'm just going to start my own shop because I see the boss sitting in there and air conditioning and he's driving his brand new F-350 and he's got all these things and like, I'm going to go start my own shop. And then they start their shop and they fail miserably in the first year because they don't understand the business side.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And we've had this conversation before about the entrepreneurs out there. And I've been a self-proclaimed intrapreneur. Like I've told her, it's like, I haven't started any of my own companies. I've come into existing and found a path of success there. Yeah. I'd love your insights and just familiarity with that because you've seen this. And I think a lot of people are sold this dream of entrepreneurship. And what I've found on the opposite side of it is being an entrepreneur, but having an entrepreneurial spirit is there is a lane and a path that it fit me. I know who I am, right? Yeah. And so I'd love your thoughts on that.
Man, this is a good subject. Yeah. My entire working career since age 15 at McDonald's, I would say I was an intrapreneur. And the difference between an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur is just the title on the company and the responsibilities at the executive level. But the difference is that so many managers in this world and even executives don't know how to manage or recruit intrapreneurs. And to me, I would rather have those kind of people all day long because they think outside the box. They don't just do things because that's the way we always have done it. They're always looking to make things more efficient, streamline things, cut out a lot of the clutter. They're actually financially aware of the decisions they make within their company and how they affect the entire company or portfolio. And so they're thinking just like a business owner, but they're in your organization. That's a blessing. Like you should have that. So here's where people mess up. They don't know how to manage those people because a lot of middle managers especially are very insecure and they still have that scarcity mindset of job security. And so they don't want to give you more responsibility or more authority because they think that that's going to jeopardize their job. And it probably will because they realize that these intrapreneurs can run circles around them in performance. And they probably have more leadership attributes than those people that just got the title on the paycheck. And so they'll do things to kind of stonewall you and keep you where you are and throw roadblocks in front of you and keep speed bumps and not give you promotions. And they'll say things to kind of passively aggressively keep you in place. I've experienced all these things. And so when you're thinking about that kind of stuff, you need to learn how to manage entrepreneurs. Actually, that was a book idea I wrote down in my notes maybe a couple of years ago. It's like, man, there needs to be a way for people to understand how to attract these people and to manage them, because a lot of them don't want to start their own company. These are the contributing, they're the most valuable players. They don't have any interest in doing all the other stuff, but they want to perform at the same level. And if you build the arena, build the field for them to perform, you're going to get all these benefits. But people don't see that. They don't understand this.
Man, I love that you broke it down that way, because I often felt like I was this outsider, outcast in a way. I was like, man, you got to be an entrepreneur. You got to open your own company and all that. And given that opportunity a couple of years ago of doing that or aligning up with another existing company, I'm like, but they're already further along in these areas that I'm not good at. I don't want to go create this platform or do compliance or all these things. Like, that is not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But this is my wheelhouse over here. And so if somebody's out there thinking about that, they're like, okay, Tony and Brian, I love this idea of the intrapreneur thing. What skills do you think make that great entrepreneur today, and how can they really build their career? Because I think it's just not talked about enough, and what they can do to contribute today and when.
So here's the weird things as an observer in the entrepreneur's mind. I know you're going to agree with all these things I'm going to tell the audience here. So age 15, like I said, McDonald's, flipping burgers. I did that through high school until I was 18. Then I went to be a busser at Olive Garden, right? But nobody was hiring. It was a small town. So everybody else in my age group was complaining about their job. Minimum wage job. I think we were making $3.50 an hour, something stupid, right? And while everybody was complaining about having to wear the name tag and the paper hat and flipping burgers, I realized that, hey, I'm working in the number one franchise in the world, and there's got to be a reason they're number one. And so I was always paying attention, like, what are they doing to make themselves number one? And it started with the training. Back then they had the VHS tapes in the break room, and they had a TV, and the only thing that you could watch was the training videos. There was no TV. It was like one of those players.
I remember these.
And they had 30 of these videos. They had how to cook fries, how to make a cheeseburger, each one was a different video. And the videos were actually humorous. They were actually entertaining by design, because when you're sitting there for 20, 30-minute break and you got nothing to do, we didn't have phones back then.
Yeah.
You would just put in a tape, especially the ones that were the funniest, and you just watch that as and the funny thing about these training videos, they were the exact same length as your break, 20 minutes on purpose, right? Mm-hmm. So that was very smart. And you look at the kitchen layout and you see the efficiencies, like the workflow, and they're trying to minimize time and get the food out. And a lot of people think fast food, like, oh, that's joke, terrible food. Yeah. Opinions about food quality is completely outside the subject. I don't eat at those restaurants either. Yeah. But the processes that they had, even the fries, like all these frying vats they had for the Filet-O-Fish, they had the French fries, the chicken McNuggets. They each had their own vat because the timing was different, temperatures were different. And the cool thing I realized when I was cooking was that each of them had its own alarm sound. So when the things were done and you're busy over here flipping burgers, you can hear like a pitch that's different alarm. You go, oh, fries are done. You didn't have to go, what is this? So there's a lot of inefficiencies built in the process. And so entrepreneurs pay attention to systems and processes and communication. That's what they pay attention to. Mm-hmm. Move fast forward to corporate. I'm working in project management, managing hundreds of millions of dollars of projects. I could have just stayed in my lane and said, hey, I'm in project management, project execution. I'm only going to focus on that. I've got project accountants telling me all my project numbers. I've got regulatory agencies doing things. I've got HR over here. Most people just stay in their lanes. They just do what they're told, and they never look over the fence. I was always curious about what are they doing on that side of the fence? What are they doing in marketing? What are they doing in PR? And so I would look at what are the communication interfaces were between departments, and eventually I started collecting all these communication interfaces. I was like, man, we're wasting a lot of time communicating back and forth with departments with this redundant information that I could just make into one document that everybody would actually have access to the information they need, and get rid of like these 10 forms that each department makes their own forms, right? And so that's what I did. I started refining project management departments, and that's why I moved up so fast. It's like, hey, I can get it down to one form that holds 80% of the information, and then we can do communication for the extra 20%. That keeps things shorter. And then boom, people are like, dude, no one's ever really done that before, because everybody stays in their lane. And so entrepreneurs are always looking for efficiency, carving out redundancy. How do we make better systems? How do we do better training? How do we do the workflow? How do we do the plant layouts a little bit more efficiently? And that's why you want those kind of people working for you.
Dude, I love that example too, because I think about that today. Who wouldn't want that type of person in there that goes, hey, we're going to make this a little bit different. And I know we're often told, stay in your lane, do all these things. And hey, this is the way it's always been done. Like all these cliches that are there. And you've heard that. What's been one of the lessons since 2015, going out on your own, creating speaker, author, you got your community and all this stuff. What has been some of the things that have helped you as you've grown? Because I've watched, you're one of the most consistent, one of the most on message. Like I don't ever see you veer off into some random spot. Like you're so consistent there. How have you been able to do that? And what have you learned through that journey?
Man, it's kind of touching on the personal branding and the positioning here, right? So I think that it's very important to understand that personal brand extends beyond your career, your profession. I think too many small business owners, especially on the internet, only want to talk about their business. They only want to talk about their industry. And it's very one-dimensional. And you might be likable and your content might be good. Like we could talk, like Brian, if your content was just always about mortgages and financing and things like that, I would be bored. I love you to death, but I'd be like, bro, I know what you're going to talk about before I click play.
Yeah.
Okay, like I support you, but I don't want to watch the content. And you and I both see a lot of people that make this mistake because they're too on message. They're always talking about their industry, their business, or what they're selling. And you go look at these friend requests that we get, and you click on their profile. If I look at your profile and all you're doing is pitching or talking about your business, like I'm not interested because that's going to appear in my feed. And that's just like inviting junk mail into your mailbox. Mm-hmm. And I can love you from a distance. I don't need to see that on my feed. And so how do we build a personal brand? Well, you have to be personal. You have to show what people's lives are. You have to show what your common interests are because we build real rapport and real networking through common interests. For me, automotive, working out, powerlifting, traveling the world, anything automotive related or cars, like sometimes the comedy stuff because I've done the comedy school as well. So those 5 things are kind of me right now, and this is always subject to change, but those are me. Mm-hmm. And so I will always create content on those 5 categories because I want people to know, like, hey, they can relate with me on this, or maybe they don't want to relate with me at all. That's fine because they move themselves out of the fold. So I think people are not showing enough of themselves. That they think that their followers are personal brand, but I disagree with that. Because especially if I go to your Instagram and you never show your face, like you don't have a personal brand. You're entertaining at best, but you're not a personal brand because I don't know you. Mm-hmm. I don't even know your name. You don't have your name on your profile. It's not a personal brand. You built a brand. You built a logo just like I built logos and sold, but it's not a personal brand. So you and I both know you need to have people that know you, like you, and trust you to do business with you. And in order for them to do so, they need to know more about you and what you believe in. You know, we're here in an election year, and it's a lot of turmoil and politics and things like that. I consider myself a moderate. I don't want to build identities around either side. I think there's clowns in Democrats and there's clowns on the Republican side. And I think that if you build your identity and say I'm one or the other, like you're kind of just a sheeple. You're kind of following the herd. And so people will say, they'll see me make a post about a political thing, but it's always about business because I'm an advocate for business owners. So when there's regulations or bills that pass that affect my constituents and my friends and my business owners, yeah, I'm very vocal about that. I protect my business owners. Some people will see that and go, well, what's your take on abortion? What's your take on all these other hot topic things, LGBTQ? And I was like, I have opinions on all those, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm here to protect business owners. And so I'll just stay in my lane and make political posts, but they're always focused on things. And I think too many people think that they need opinions on everything, and they're just scattershot.
Man, people need to rewind that and listen to that again because we're already starting to see that. Mm-hmm. And it is the stuff where you're watching, you're like, you don't even realize how your audience and the people that actually are engaged with you put out one of those posts and you just go out in random left field and you're like, why? And it's almost... You're not the authority in that. And I always ask myself that, am I the authority in that? Like, similar to yours, like, man, I'm gonna talk about soccer all the time. You're gonna see that, and working out and family and travel and business and things that I've learned, through my life. And I'm like, man, if I'm not talking about skateboarding because I've never done it well. I don't know it. And I always laugh. The other day I put a post out about lacrosse and it wasn't as funny as your post because yours are funnier with the videos, but I'm just laughing about lacrosse. I'm like, guys, if you know about lacrosse, I know nothing about it. I said, I now can relate to those people that go to soccer games with me and are asking me all the questions. And people were coming out of the woodwork, all these lacrosse people like, oh man, that's so cool.
You come hang out with me.
Yeah. And I'm like,
take you to a game. Yeah.
No, but my kids are interested in it. Yeah. So I'm interested in it. And I think sharing that part of what's there of like, Nicole and I'll be married 22 years this year. I'm like, man, I'm going to share those things because like I can relate to that.
That's your life.
That's my life. That's what I know.
Yeah. You should be wary of when people don't show their lives. It kind of goes back to the fraud thing. If people are talking about how successful they are and, like you should hire me as your coach and 6-figure this, 7-figure that. It's like, okay, bro, next time you do a live stream, why don't you just take me on a tour through your house and see how they respond? Oh, well, just because someone has money doesn't mean they have to have a nice house. Like they probably have a nice house or a nice apartment or something. They have something nice.
Yeah.
We always level up, right? Unless I'm hiring you to be a minimalist, like coach, right? Yeah. You better have something like, and what are you driving? If I never see like anything like evidence of what you say if you're saying you have this lifestyle, but I don't see any real evidence of it, that's another red flag, right? So show that stuff. And it's not the flex. It's not to be like, hey, here's my car and here's my fancy watch. Like you're not doing that. But if your content is showing your true life, they're going to see hints and evidence of your real life. Like you and I travel a lot. We love to travel, not just for work. We go all these interesting places and we show those things. Do you think that would be possible if we were broke or we were like ultra time committed and we had no time to do that? Like it wouldn't be possible.
Yeah.
And so show those little pieces of evidence of your life. And people start to put 2 and 2 together and go, hey, he's been doing this for years, dude. It ain't like 6 months he's trying to like push this marketing campaign down that successful all of a sudden. Like there's evidence going back decades of this kind of stuff. And that's the things that people need to be looking for.
God, I love that, man. And I am very in tune with some of that too. And I would encourage people listening, I love your thoughts on this, is look for people that you actually align up beyond just the success. I know you mentioned people lead with money and all those things. And, it's come with age, unfortunately, because I picked some bad ones early on of like, man, I just want to be like them and learn this fast and learn. And now I've realized, man, that alignment with like faith and core values and things for me it's just going to trump the rest. Yeah. Because if they're successful in those areas and they also have the other success, I want that holistic piece, because success without your health, your family, and relationships there,
it's meaningless to me. I don't care how much money you have. If you're out of shape, I've been there before. Been the multimillionaire that was fat, and I didn't like that. And I remember being a former athlete as a younger person. In my mind, I'm always an athlete, but then when I was 36, when I started kind of getting fat, 36 to 39, I was getting lazy, man. I had plenty of money, everybody's wanting something from me, and I was doing pretty well and had all the nice things, 10 cars in the driveway. And I just remember looking in the mirror every morning in the bathroom mirror and seeing like this overweight late 30-year-old thing, and I started looking at the friends I was hanging around with at that time, and they were all kind of the same way. So our standards kind of reduced all across the board. And yeah, I love those guys to death, but we all validated each other's excuses. Like someone start going to the gym and they injure themselves, like, hey, we ain't getting any younger, we're not like we used to. And so you start, I agree with that. So when you're hanging around with a bunch of people that lower their standards and are always having these excuses, it's kind of like playing a tennis match. You're just serving your excuses back and forth and you're validating each other. And the conversation never really goes deeper because neither side is going to challenge each other. Like, oh man, that sounds like excuses, dude. Like, get your ass out there and go do something. And so, when you start to realize that at 39, when I was about to hit 40, I was like, I need to take this more serious. And I feel like an athlete, but I don't look like an athlete. And what do I need to do to get back to that? So that's when I really started being more focused on the gym and eating healthier and not drinking and all kinds of different things. So yeah, to me, the money is the easier part of the success. I think that's easier for people to achieve. Hire the people that have already done it, learn the ways they've done it. But I look at people's lifestyle, and I think you may have seen that again, a pyramid graph, because I seem to like pyramids. I never really thought about this, but I like pyramids. I talked about the 3 levels of personal development. The base of the pyramids, when you're infatuated by the person's flex or their cash or the lifestyle, like, the people that are just showing watches and cars and lifestyle stuff. And if you're infatuated with that person, you're at a different level. You're at the lowest level of personal development. That's important because it got you in. The middle part, you're starting to look at their followers and their influence. You're just like, okay, how do I get a big audience? How do I get more influence? So you're kind of impressed by people's version of that. Usually that's kind of what you're craving. But when you get past that, the ultimate to me in personal development, and one of my clients pointed out, he goes, there's a big gap between those bottom two to the top one. You really are most impressed by somebody's mindfulness and their peacefulness. And you start to realize, like, how do I become less stressed? How do I become less anxious? How do I have enjoying every single day? How do I get to live life to the highest potential without all the strings and attachments and obligations, and having the sovereignty and the freedom of time, freedom of location, freedom of financials, and all these things. I live a very fun life by choice. And when I started to kind of getting past the flex thing in my early 20s, 30s, and then getting that, and then looking at people's influence and impact, okay, that's cool. Like, that's where most people stop. When you finally get awareness, you go, hey, I'm more attracted to that person's mindfulness and their peacefulness.
Dude, that resonates with me. And that's something I saw even with my dad. As much as he would grind and having to set things up and do all these things, it's like there was always a level of peacefulness. I was like, man, I want that. And I love you said this too, is there was points in my career where making plenty of money, but the stress, I look back and I'm like, how did I choose this during that? And you just don't know any different until you see someone that you go, they can have these things and they're not stressed. And I would invite everybody, and I want to get your take on this, is becoming curious was one of the biggest shifts for me years ago. I just started asking people, hey, how do you do this? Like, you've been married longer than I have, or even with fitness, like, how do you do that on the road? That was a struggle of mine. Is I would go on the road and eat crap and, just totally go off the bandwagon. I'm like, why am I doing this? And you start to ask people, like, you work out, I see you deadlifting massive weights over here and consistent. Have you asked people along the way? Is that how you stay consistent with some of yours and continue to grow at the level you're at? I don't know if I'm asking this the right way, but I think, and I watch someone like you and I go, okay, you've achieved all these things. You've got this peacefulness. You get to travel and do things. How do you continually learn and grow at that level?
The best way to answer that question is you have to be more firm with boundaries and saying no. Successful people have become experts at saying no. You and I are very empathic. We like to help people. We're people pleasers to the nth degree. If you allow yourself to help every single person, you'll have no time for yourself. If you're pouring into everyone all day long, you'll never be able to pour into yourself. And so you have to learn the courage and the strength to say no. And the easiest way to think about that is, if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, right? Now, it's guarding yourself in those boundaries. Yeah, some people will not like that. Some people will not like having less access to you, but usually the people that are offended by that don't respect your boundaries anyways, so they don't need to be in your life. A lot of people will like to have certain access or opportunities by buzzing around you, but as soon as those opportunities change or that door is closed, you get to see who their true character is. And that's a good thing, because you'd rather learn sooner than later. And so certain things I do, like to maintain mindfulness. One, I don't have a phone ringer on at all. I don't have it on vibrate. I have 0 notifications popping up on my screen, because I grew up as a Gen Xer in an era where I didn't need a phone, and I was very okay with that. And so I don't let my devices control me. I realize it's a very valuable tool for our business and communication. It's great technology. I enjoy social media, but I make time for that stuff. I don't just get consumed by it. I'm more interested in creating than I am consuming. And so no notifications. If I want phone calls, when I'm working at my desk, like you're sitting at your desk, if I'm available for calls because my schedule is allowing that, all I do is I flip my phone over where I can see the screen. Usually it's face down, so I flip it over, and it's by my keyboard. And if I see somebody calling and I recognize the name and I have time, I'll answer it. But if not, if I don't recognize the number, if I don't recognize the name, I am not answering that phone. And so control your devices. Don't let them control you. That's one thing. And I don't have all that stuff turned on. One of the things is just focus on having more fun. Create more enjoyment in your life. It's like, I think too many people, especially in the space, take themselves too seriously. It's like an ego thing. Women less so. I think women have better check on their emotional side, especially the men. It's like, yeah, we both like to wear like dark clothes and do that things, but let's be real, guys. Like, some of you guys dress like you're a badass because there's certain things that you don't have the confidence, and you don't want people to mess with you, and You'll get sleeve tattoos and try to look like you're super angry, but you're kind of a puppy dog.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with looking like that, but if you're a puppy dog, act like a puppy dog. Be happy. Like you're creating this character that you have to keep up. And one of the best compliments you'll ever get, and I've given this to you, you're the same in person as I see you online. And that's the way it should be. It's so much easier just being yourself. And you and I have met a lot of people who are not the way they appear online. They're online, maybe they're charismatic and they're just all this, and you meet them and they're like kind of like a dead fish, and they're boring and they're introverted and they don't communicate very well. Can't even make eye contact with you. They just make you feel awkward, right? Like they're living behind a character, and that's a hard lie and a long life to try to keep up with that. I can't even imagine the amount of anxiety and stress that causes. So yeah, do things that you enjoy. Schedule those things. Schedule time to go skateboarding. I love going to the gym. I like pushing myself. I schedule those things and guard those things because they're very important. A lot of times people say, hey, I don't have time to go to the gym, Brian. Like I'm busy. I got kids, like all the excuses, right?
Yeah.
As if nobody with kids or a job has ever gone to the gym before, right? And so I teach this to my clients. It's like, okay, if you're going to have a meeting, just like you and I are having this meeting right now, we knew for 6 months that we've been planning this, that we're going to meet at 10 a.m. on this Monday morning. We're here. It's a very important meeting with somebody I value, somebody that's important to me. So we have these meetings and we show up on time for those important meetings for people that we set with, right? Why don't people show up for themselves at the same level? They should be their number one MVP priority person in their life. You have to build yourself first. And if your gym time is on your calendar and somebody's like, hey, can we have a meeting that time? And you're like, oh yeah, I'm people pleaser, so yeah, I'll skip my gym time. Like, no, you just canceled a meeting with the most important person in your life, you. So if you don't want to put gym on your calendar, put important meeting with you and guard that time. If I want to go skateboard, it's on my schedule and I guard that time. You're not going to get in that. That's my time. I'm an important person to myself. And people hear that and think that's self-centered. No, that's self-control.
I love that. And I've been in those seasons where I would people please and move this meeting. I'll do that. And you just try to do it all. And then you look up and you're like, nothing left. And I've learned this for me. When my fitness isn't in order, my wife's the first one to tell me, like, you got your workout in today? I'm like,
subtle. You got to love the subtlety of
it's like, why am I off? Like, is that where we're going? And you made me think about this weekend. I was flying back from spring break and I was listening to that Deion Sanders Ed Milet.
That was a great episode.
Oh man, wasn't that good? And I love, if people haven't listened to it, listen to that. But Deion talked about that fact of trying to be that persona of prime time, all this stuff there, and like being that person, and realize he's like, man, it's exhausting being that person, even suicidal, and went down this place that, mental health, we talk about that, both of us very passionate about that. It's like, we've seen it, obviously with my dad's, history of being a psychologist. I'm like, man, I'm very aware of the men's side of this. And I do worry about people, that don't put those things in order, because if you start to go down that rabbit hole, then you start to erode who you are as a person, as a husband, as a dad, all these things that we know are important roles, and you lose that. I'd love for you to share one thing. Turned 50 last year. We talked about aging and the wisdom and the things. What's something you're learning right now that maybe changed a belief, or you wish you had known earlier version of Tony?
I think that it's okay to have different purposes through each phase of your life. All right. I think that, let's go back, like when you're in your teenage years, your purpose may be to become someone that has more friends, or maybe a girlfriend or boyfriend, depending on who you are. Trying to fit in. You're trying to learn social skills. In your 20s, you're more focused on, I need to get ahead. I need to get some education. I need to learn a skill. So that's when you go to college, you learn a skill. You're trying to figure out how to make money. You're trying to become more independent and prove that you're an adult, right? 30s I can't speak for women in this regard, but for men, 30s is when you start trying to make money. Like, man, I got a healthy body. I've got time. I'm just going to go stack cash. I'm going to go work crazy overtime hours. I'm going to pick up night shifts. I'm going to go travel the world and work in remote places. Like, you're sacrificing to try to make as much money as possible. It's because we're focused on like the financial security. In 40s, you start to become more reflective. You start to look back on your life. And that's when you start to think about, man, I really messed up there. And could have done this better, but hey, I had a few wins along the way too. But you start to be more reflective because you start to become more aware of time, and that our time is fleeting, and that there's a finish line for everybody. And then at 50, I'm only a year into it, but it's more about how do I value my time more, and how do I create more impact doing things I enjoy. I'm in the enjoyment phase, and I would say mid 40s I was that way. I'm not doing things to pursue the money anymore. I'm doing things because I want to create a positive impact, and I want to serve people, and I want to serve people the best way I can. And it's different for everybody. Not everybody wants to be a coach or a teacher, like I said. But whatever you are gifted with or what you are interested in, maybe it's being an artist or a musician. Like, that's how you can impact the world. Use your gift and your intuition and your gut to go impact that world. And I think that's we need more people out there serving and showing their true talents versus just, well, I'm an engineer, I make money over here and I need to stay an engineer, and hey, I got 20 years, I should just stay. Hey, I'm a staff at Chevron, I should just, this is a dream job for people, I should just stay here, and get my pension and retire. Like, all that stuff's an excuse because it's keeping you from what you really want to be doing. And I wake up every day looking forward to creating memes and making people laugh and creating speeches and traveling the world and meeting interesting people. Like, I enjoy that. So 50s to me is always I embrace the uncertainty in life now. I look forward to the things that I don't know, and I look forward to learning those things. And so I used to fear those kind of things like most people, but now it's like uncertainty and the unknown are like exciting to me. Like, I can't wait to see what I get to learn and who I get to meet and who I become in another 10 years.
Dude, I love that. Yeah, I'm learning some of that, and some of my friends like you that I watch, I'm going, okay, what can I learn from people that are further along in that, and go, okay, what can I start to embody today? And so for everybody listening out there, like, if you are in your 20s or 30s or even early 40s, like, listen to what you just shared, because that to me is the wisdom as we go through. And there's nothing wrong with those seasons. I always say, like, there's seasons for all those. But if you could learn how to integrate those sooner and to enjoy what you're doing, I think back, man, what did I not do in my 30s that I could have done? And, just come back from the Bahamas. Like, that was the best trip we've said for our family ever. I'm going, okay, well, we got to do these things more. And we found what really fuels us. My friend, this has been awesome. We could talk for hours.
Yeah, we're gonna good stuff, man.
Well, thank you for sharing and being real and just honest about the journey and what you've been on. And clearly, I mean, the success, check the box. But for me, what I learned and I'm listening to today is the lessons that you took even from your dad, and you go back to these jobs at McDonald's and Olive Garden and all these places. And it's like you were always somebody that was observant, curious, and you started to build who you are today. And that's how I love watching the stuff you do, because how you show up is always one of those. I go, what's Tony studying? What's he learning? What's he sharing? What's he doing there? And it could be, to your point, it could be a funny meme, which makes me laugh. And then I go, hold on, there's a lesson in it too, though, which you always integrate in. So thank you for always being that person that shows up. I know a lot of us, especially in the Arte Syndicate, appreciate you and what you share and leading by example.
Hey, thank you for having me on the show, Brian. It's been an awesome conversation. I'm glad we got to hang out a little bit here. And you guys take some notes and go actually do the things. Don't just listen to these podcasts and take no actions, because you have to take the actions. You have to make some changes. Going back to the topic we talked about, reinvent yourself if required. It's not good enough just to transform or change or evolve if you require a reinvention of yourself.
That's it. Dude, what a show. What a show. Okay, guys. I took some notes over here to start. I got some more things I can't wait to listen to. Guys, we're going to put links in for Tony. You want to follow Tony Whatley. He's got the Driven Community 365. We also got his book, Side Hustle Millionaire. We're going to put that link in there. You heard some of his comedic acts today, too. He's got some funny memes you're going to want to tune in there. But check out his community. We're going to include it in. And I'm going to leave you the very similar message that Tony shared, is as you listen to this today, I believe there was something in this show that was directly meant for you. That's why we do these. I love these because selfishly, I learn and get to experience that. But I believe more importantly, you listen to the show for a reason. There's something in here that prompted you. You know you need to take an action. That gap that exists today, if you can bring this down and take an action now, whatever that one small action might feel like, it's actually going to move you forward. Could be to reach out to one of us. Let us know that something in the show resonated with you, challenge you. You've got a question about something, reach out. We both do follow up. We like to respond to people. I think that's the way that community is built. And then the other part would be share this with people you know in your life that you go, you know what, my friend or my significant other, whoever it might be in my family or my community, they need to hear this message. That's why we do the show. That's why we bring great guests on. And we appreciate you guys tuning in like you do every week. And we'll catch you on the next episode. Cheers.